The laughter began before Elvis Presley had even reached the microphone. It was the early 1970s, and the theater was overflowing with people who had come expecting an unforgettable night of music. Golden stage lights burned through the darkness. A deep blue curtain hung behind the musicians. The air was thick with cigarette smoke, excitement, and the restless sound of thousands of people waiting for the show to begin. Then Elvis walked onto the stage. Dressed in a brilliant white jumpsuit, he moved toward the microphone as the audience erupted. But on the opposite side of the stage stood another legend. B.B. King. His guitar rested in his hands. A confident smile crossed his face. At first, Elvis thought it was only friendly amusement. But then B.B. slowly shook his head and laughed. The audience noticed. The cheering faded. Elvis stopped. B.B. took one step toward him. "You've got style, Elvis." A few people laughed. Elvis remained calm. "You've got the clothes, you've got the moves, you've got thousands of people screaming every time you walk onto a stage." The audience chuckled again. Then B.B.'s expression changed. "But don't confuse all that with being a real singer." Silence. The words seemed to travel through the entire theater. Elvis looked directly at him. B.B. raised his guitar slightly. "A real singer doesn't need the lights. Nobody moved. Doesn't need the costume." The silence grew heavier. "Doesn't need thousands of people screaming to make him sound important." Somewhere near the front, someone nervously laughed. But nobody joined them. Elvis still said nothing. B.B. stepped closer. "You're an entertainer, Elvis. Nobody can deny that." He paused. "But a singer." His smile returned. "I don't think so." For one long moment, Elvis stood completely still. The musicians looked at one another. Someone backstage whispered something nobody else could hear. Thousands of people watched Elvis Presley as if the entire theater had suddenly forgotten how to breathe. Everyone expected him to explode. Everyone expected anger. But Elvis only lowered his eyes. Because B.B. did not know what those words had awakened. Long before the white jumpsuits, before the records, before the cameras, before the world knew his name, there had been a lonely young boy in Tupelo, Mississippi, listening. Listening to gospel. Listening to country. Listening to blues. Listening to voices that seemed to carry an entire lifetime inside a single note. Elvis had never believed music was just sound. To him, music was a confession, a cry, a prayer, a memory, and he had spent years being told that his voice was wrong. Too rough, too different, too strange. Some people had told him he didn't sound like anyone else. They had meant it as an insult. But Elvis had learned something important. Maybe he wasn't supposed to sound like anyone else. Now, years later, beneath the hottest lights in the theater, those old doubts suddenly returned. B.B. watched him carefully. "What happened, Elvis?" Elvis slowly raised his head. B.B. smiled. "Nothing to say." Elvis walked toward the microphone. One step, then another. His boots touched the stage with a soft echo. The audience waited. B.B. crossed his arms. "Go ahead," he said. Elvis placed one hand on the microphone stand. "Prove me wrong." Those words changed something. Elvis looked out at the darkness beyond the stage. Thousands of faces. Thousands of strangers. Yet suddenly, he felt completely alone. Then he closed his eyes. And when he opened them again, his expression was different. There was no anger, no arrogance, only something quiet, something deep. Elvis leaned toward the microphone. Sometimes, his voice was barely above a whisper. The entire theater leaned forward. Sometimes the people who doubt your voice. He paused. Are the reason you finally learn how loud your heart can sing. BB's smile slowly disappeared. No music started. No drums. No guitar. No orchestra. Just silence. Then Elvis took a breath and sang. The first note was soft. So soft that it almost disappeared into the enormous theater. But it didn't, because every person listening suddenly understood that Elvis was not trying to impress them. He was giving them something far more dangerous. The truth. His voice carried pain. Not the pain of a performer creating drama. The pain of a man remembering every door that had closed in his face. Every person who had laughed. Every person who had decided he was not enough. The note grew stronger. BB slowly lowered his guitar. Elvis continued. His voice climbed. Higher. Richer. The sound moved through the theater like a wave. A woman in the front row placed her hand over her mouth. One of the musicians stopped playing without realizing it. There was still no music behind Elvis. Nothing to hide him. Nothing to support him. Nothing. Just his voice. And suddenly, that was enough. Then Elvis climbed again. The theater froze. His face tightened. His hands trembled slightly against the microphone stand. BB took one slow step backward. For the first time that night, he was no longer smiling. Elvis reached deeper into the note. The sound became raw, powerful, almost impossible to believe. But then, just as the audience thought he had reached his limit, Elvis went higher, and the entire theater seemed to stop breathing. A glass fell somewhere backstage. Crash! Nobody even turned around. They couldn't. Their eyes were locked on Elvis. The white jumpsuit. The microphone. The man who had been told seconds earlier that he wasn't a real singer. BB stared at him. His fingers slowly loosened around his guitar. Elvis held the note. And in that moment, it felt as if every insult he had ever heard was being answered without a single angry word. But before Elvis could finish, BB suddenly stepped forward. Wait! Elvis opened his eyes. The note stopped. Silence. Absolute silence. BB looked at him with an expression nobody had expected to see. Jog. Then he walked toward Elvis. One step. Then another. The audience watched without moving. And when BB finally stopped directly in front of him, he whispered something that made Elvis's expression change completely. That wasn't the voice I expected to hear. Elvis stared at him. Then BB looked toward the musicians. Bring the lights down. Nobody moved. BB's voice became firmer. All of them. One by one. The golden lights disappeared. The theater became darker, until Elvis was standing beneath only a single faint spotlight. BB looked directly into his eyes. Then he raised his guitar. If you're really not afraid to sing without the lights. He paused. The entire theater waited. Then sing the next one with nothing to hide behind. And somewhere in the darkness, a man Elvis had not seen before slowly stepped closer to the stage. He had been watching from the shadows, listening to every word. And what happened next would turn this musical challenge into a night Elvis would never forget. Before we continue, tell us in the comments, where are you watching from right now? And if you believe true talent speaks louder than doubt, don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe for more powerful cinematic stories. But Elvis wasn't looking at the audience anymore. He was staring into the darkness. Because the mysterious man had just whispered one sentence. A sentence that made Elvis grip the microphone tighter. Sing this next song, Elvis. A pause. And I'll tell you the truth about your mother. And I'll tell you the truth about your mother. The words cut through the darkness. Elvis froze. His fingers tightened around the microphone stand. For a second, he forgot about the audience. He forgot about B.B. King. He forgot about the thousands of eyes watching him. Only one thing remained. His mother. The mysterious man slowly stepped closer to the stage. Elvis tried to see his face, but the darkness hid most of it. "Who are you?" Elvis asked. The man did not answer. B.B. lowered his guitar. "What's going on?" Elvis kept staring into the darkness. The stranger finally spoke. "You don't remember me, Elvis." Elvis's face hardened. "Then come where I can see you." The man stepped beneath the edge of the faint light. He was older. His gray hair was neatly combed. His coat looked expensive. But his eyes carried something cold. Something Elvis did not trust. "I remember you," the man said. Elvis shook his head. "No, you were young. Who are you?" The stranger looked toward the empty seat beside the stage. Then back at Elvis. "Someone who knew your family." The theater became restless. People whispered. B.B. stepped closer. "If you've got something to say, say it." The man ignored him. He looked only at Elvis. "Your mother once asked me to make her a promise." Elvis's expression changed. The stranger continued. "She made me swear I would never tell you." Elvis felt his chest tighten. "Tell me what?" The man smiled faintly. "That depends." Elvis stared at him. "On what?" The stranger pointed toward the microphone. "Sing." B.B. frowned. "You've got to be kidding." The man looked at him. "No." B.B. stepped forward. "This is not your theater." "No," the stranger said calmly, "but tonight it's his stage." Elvis remained silent. The stranger looked at him again. "One song." "What song?" "Any song you choose." Elvis narrowed his eyes. And then I tell you what Gladys wanted you to know." The name hit Elvis like lightning. His mother's name. Nobody called her that in front of him without understanding what it meant. For a moment, the theater disappeared. Elvis remembered her smile. Her voice. The way she had believed in him before the world knew who he was. He remembered losing her. Remembered the emptiness afterward. And suddenly, anger rose inside him. "You don't use her name to control me." The stranger's expression remained calm. "Then walk away." Elvis stared at him. "Walk away," the man repeated, "and spend the rest of your life wondering." B.B. moved beside Elvis. "Don't listen to him." Elvis looked at B.B. The challenge between them had vanished. B.B.'s face was serious now. This man came here knowing exactly what to say. Elvis nodded slowly. "I know." "Then don't give him what he wants." The stranger laughed quietly. Interesting advice from the man who just challenged Elvis to sing with nothing to hide behind. BB's eyes hardened. That was music. And this isn't. No. BB pointed at him. This is manipulation. The audience murmured. Elvis looked toward the microphone. Then back at the stranger. One song. The man nodded. Elvis took a breath. Fine. BB turned. Elvis. Elvis looked at him. I need to know. BB studied his face. Then nodded. All right. He lifted his guitar. Elvis looked toward the darkened theater. Only one faint spotlight remained. No orchestra. No flashing lights. No costume to impress anyone. Just a man. And a voice. Elvis closed his eyes. BB played one slow note. Then another. The theater became completely silent. Elvis began to sing. This time his voice was different. Not because he was trying to prove BB wrong. Not because he wanted applause. Every word felt personal. Every note seemed to carry a memory. BB listened. And slowly, something changed in his face. Earlier, he had believed Elvis was an entertainer first. A man of movement. A man of image. But now, with the lights gone, with the audience silent, BB heard something else. A wounded soul. A voice searching through darkness. Elvis climbed into the next note. His voice cracked slightly, then became stronger. He did not hide the crack. He let it stay, because pain was part of the song. The audience leaned forward. A woman began crying. One of the musicians lowered his head. And BB stopped playing. Not because he had forgotten the music. Because Elvis no longer needed him. Elvis sang alone. The stranger watched from the shadows. But the confidence had disappeared from his face. He had expected control. He had expected Elvis to become nervous. Instead, every note made Elvis stronger. Then Elvis reached the final line. His voice rose. Higher, higher, until the theater trembled beneath the power of it. Silence followed. Long, deep silence. Then the crowd exploded. Thousands of people rose. Applause crashed against the walls. But Elvis didn't smile. He turned immediately toward the stranger. Now tell me. The applause slowly faded. The stranger looked at him. For the first time, he seemed uncertain. Elvis stepped closer. You promised. The man looked around, then reached inside his coat. BB immediately moved in front of Elvis. The stranger stopped. Relax. He pulled out an old envelope. Elvis stared at it. What is that? The stranger held it tightly. A letter. Elvis's breathing changed. From who? The man looked directly at him. Your mother. Everything stopped. Elvis whispered. That's impossible. The stranger nodded. She wrote it before she died. Elvis reached for it. But the man pulled it away. Not yet. Elvis's eyes flashed with anger. You said you'd tell me. I will. Give me the letter. The stranger shook his head. First, there's something you need to understand. BB stepped forward. No more games. But the stranger ignored him. Your mother was afraid. Elvis froze. Of what? The man looked toward the dark theater. Then back at Elvis. Of the people who were watching your family. Elvis stared. The stranger lowered his voice. She believed someone wanted something from your father. BB frowned. What kind of something? The man slowly smiled. That is exactly why I came tonight. Elvis stepped closer. Who sent you? The stranger's smile disappeared. Then suddenly, a loud voice shouted from the back of the theater. Don't give HIM the letter. Everyone turned. A man stood in the aisle. His face was hidden beneath a dark hat. The stranger, holding the envelope, went pale. Elvis noticed. You know him. The stranger whispered. You don't understand. The man in the aisle began walking toward the stage. Slowly, deliberately, BB placed his guitar down. The musicians stepped back. Elvis stared at the approaching figure. Then the stranger beside him did something nobody expected. He grabbed Elvis's arm. Listen to me. Elvis pulled away. What? The stranger shoved the envelope into Elvis's hand. Run. Elvis looked at it. What are you talking about? The man in the aisle was getting closer. The stranger's voice became desperate. Your mother didn't hide that letter because she was ashamed. Elvis froze. She hid it because she was trying to protect you. Elvis looked at him. Protect me from what? The stranger stared toward the approaching man. Then whispered. From the truth about what your father did. From the truth about what your father did. Elvis stopped breathing. For one terrible second, the entire theater disappeared around him. The applause. The lights. The audience. B.B. King standing beside him. None of it mattered anymore. Elvis stared at the stranger. What did you say? The man in the dark hat continued walking down the aisle. Slowly, every step echoed through the silent theater. The stranger grabbed Elvis's arm again. We don't have time. Elvis pulled away. My father did what? The stranger looked toward the approaching figure. Then back at Elvis. Years ago, your father made a mistake. Elvis's face hardened. What mistake? The man in the aisle was closer now. BB stepped between Elvis and the stranger. Start talking. The stranger swallowed. Your father was desperate. Elvis shook his head. You're lying. I wish I was. Then prove it. Elvis raised the envelope. Is that why my mother wrote this letter? The stranger's eyes dropped toward it. Yes. Elvis stared at the old paper in his hands. His fingers trembled. For years, he had believed he knew his family's story. Not every detail, but enough. His mother had been his heart. His father had always been part of the life that came before fame. There had been hardship, pain, struggles, but secrets. Elvis slowly looked up. What did he do? The stranger opened his mouth. But suddenly, don't! The man in the dark hat shouted from the aisle. Everyone froze. He was now only a few rows from the stage. The stranger stepped backward. BB's eyes narrowed. You know him. The stranger whispered. Yes. Elvis's voice became cold. Who is he? The stranger did not answer. The man removed his hat. Elvis stared. His face was unfamiliar. Older. Severe. His eyes fixed on the envelope. Give me the letter. Elvis tightened his grip. No. The man's jaw clenched. You have no idea what you're holding. Elvis stepped toward the microphone. Then tell me. The man laughed bitterly. You really think this is about a letter? What is it about? The stranger suddenly spoke. Money. Everyone turned. The man in the aisle glared at him. Shut up. But the stranger continued. Years ago, Elvis's father was involved in a business arrangement. Elvis stared. With who? The stranger pointed directly at the man. With him. The audience began whispering again. BB stepped closer to Elvis. What kind of arrangement? The stranger looked ashamed. One that went wrong. The man in the aisle shouted. That's not how it happened. Elvis's voice cut through the theater. Then tell me how it happened. Silence. The man stared at him. For a moment, even he seemed surprised by the power in Elvis's voice. Then Elvis held up the envelope. My mother knew something. The man said nothing. She was afraid. Still nothing. Elvis took another step forward. So tell me why. The stranger whispered. Because your father discovered that the agreement was a lie. The man in the aisle suddenly rushed toward the stage. Baby moved instantly. Several security men ran forward. The audience screamed. The stranger pointed toward the man. Stop him. But Elvis didn't move. He stood beneath the faint spotlight, holding the envelope, watching as the truth he had never expected came crashing toward him. The man was restrained at the edge of the stage. Let me go. Elvis looked at him. Why do you want this letter? The man stopped struggling. For 1 second, his expression changed. Fear. Real fear. Elvis saw it. And suddenly he understood. Whatever was written inside. The man already knew. BB turned to Elvis. Open it. Elvis looked down. The envelope was worn with age. His mother's handwriting covered the front. His throat tightened. He had seen that handwriting before. On notes. On old cards. On things he had saved, because losing her had left an emptiness nothing else could fill. Now her words were in his hands again. Elvis slowly opened the envelope. The theater was completely silent. Inside was a folded letter. He unfolded it. His eyes moved across the first line. Then stopped. BB watched his face. What does it say? Elvis couldn't answer. His lips parted. But no sound came. The stranger whispered. Read it. Elvis shook his head. I can't. BB placed a hand gently on his shoulder. You can. Elvis closed his eyes. Then opened them. And began to read. My dear son. His voice broke. The audience became silent again. If you are reading this, then there are things I never had the courage to tell you while I was alive. Elvis stopped. He took a breath. Then continued. Your father made mistakes, so did I, but never believed that either of us stopped loving you for even 1 moment. The stranger lowered his head. Elvis read on. There are people who will tell you that the mistakes of your family belong to you. They do not. The man, being restrained, looked away. Elvis's voice became stronger. You must never carry another person's shame as if it were your own. You must choose what kind of man you become. Elvis stared at the words. For the first time that night, tears filled his eyes. BB saw them. So did thousands of people. But nobody moved. Nobody laughed. Elvis looked toward the man in the aisle. What did my father do? The stranger answered quietly. He signed an agreement without knowing what it would cost. Elvis frowned. What cost? He was tricked. The restrained man shouted. Liar! The stranger turned toward him. No! His voice shook. For once in my life, I'm telling the truth. Elvis looked between them. The stranger continued. Your father discovered that the men he was working with were cheating people. The audience murmured. He wanted out. The stranger pointed toward the man. But they wanted him silent. Elvis stared. And my mother. She knew. Elvis looked back at the letter. The stranger's voice became quieter. She was afraid those men would come after your family. The theater suddenly felt colder. Elvis whispered. So she wrote this. Yes, to protect me. The stranger nodded. The man in the aisle laughed. Protect you. Everyone turned. He smiled bitterly. She couldn't protect anyone. Elvis's face hardened. BB stepped forward. Careful. But the man looked directly at Elvis. Ask yourself something. Elvis said nothing. Why did she never tell you? Elvis stared. The man smiled. Because some truths destroy families. The stranger shouted. Don't listen to him. But Elvis raised his hand. Let him talk. BB looked at him. Elvis, please. The theater became silent. Elvis looked toward the man. Tell me. The man stared back. Your father didn't just make a mistake. Elvis's grip tightened around the letter. He made enemies. A pause. And one of them has been waiting a very long time for you to learn the truth. Suddenly, a voice came through the theater speakers. Deep. Distorted. Every person in the audience looked around. Elvis. Elvis froze. The voice continued. If you want the whole truth. The stage lights suddenly went out. Darkness swallowed the theater. People screamed. For several seconds, nobody could see anything. Then, one single spotlight returned. Elvis was standing alone. The envelope still in his hand. B.B. King was nowhere beside him. The stranger had disappeared. And at the far end of the stage, B.B.'s guitar lay on the floor. Then Elvis heard a faint sound. A guitar string. Someone had plucked it. Once. Elvis slowly turned toward the darkness. Another note. Then another. And suddenly, a voice whispered from somewhere behind him. Now, Elvis. A pause. Let's find out if your voice is powerful enough to bring the truth into the light. Let's find out if your voice is powerful enough to bring the truth into the light. Elvis turned sharply. Darkness covered the stage. Only one faint spotlight remained. Somewhere in the theater, another guitar string vibrated. Then another. Elvis took a slow breath. Baby. No answer. The audience had become completely silent. Thousands of people waited in the darkness. Then, from behind the curtain, a voice answered. I'm here. Elvis recognized it immediately. B.B. King. Relief flashed across Elvis's face. A second spotlight came on. B.B. stood several feet away, holding his guitar. But his expression was serious. Elvis, he said quietly, this isn't about proving anything anymore. Elvis looked down at his mother's letter. I know. B.B. stepped closer. Do you? Elvis looked toward him. B.B. raised the guitar. Earlier tonight, I challenged you because I thought I knew who you were. The theater listened. I saw the suit. He pointed toward Elvis. The fame. Then toward the audience. The screaming. BB lowered his hand. And I made the same mistake everyone else made. Elvis said nothing. I judged the man before I heard his heart. The audience remained silent. BB looked directly at Elvis. But now you've got something inside you that is heavier than any insult I gave you. Elvis's eyes filled with emotion. My mother. BB nodded. And your father. Elvis looked at the letter. Everything I thought I knew. He stopped. BB waited. Elvis swallowed. What if he wasn't the man I believed he was? BB's answer came immediately. Then find out. Elvis looked up. And if the truth hurts. BB gently touched the strings. Then sing through it. A soft guitar note filled the theater. Elvis stared at him. BB smiled faintly. That's what the blues taught me. Another note. Pain doesn't disappear because you hide it. Another. But sometimes, if you're brave enough to face it. BB nodded toward the microphone. You can turn it into something that doesn't destroy you. Elvis slowly walked back to the microphone. His hands were shaking. Not from fear of the audience. Not from BB. From the letter. From the memories. From the possibility that his entire life had been built around a story he had never fully understood. Then Elvis unfolded the paper again. The final lines caught his eyes. He had not read them before. His breathing stopped. BB watched him. What is it? Elvis whispered. She wrote something else. Read it. Elvis shook his head. BB stepped closer. Elvis. The theater waited. Slowly, Elvis raised the letter. His voice trembled. My son, if one day you discover the truth about your father, remember this. A man can make a terrible mistake and still regret it for the rest of his life. Do not let another person's mistake teach you how to hate. Let it teach you how to choose better. Elvis stopped. Tears ran down his face. The audience did not applaud. Nobody wanted to break the moment. Then Elvis continued. Your father was afraid, I was afraid, but you, my son, you must not live your life afraid of becoming us. You are not our mistakes, you are your own choice. Elvis lowered the letter. His father. For years, he had remembered him through silence, hardship, and fragments of the past. But now something changed. The truth wasn't that his father had been perfect. The truth was that nobody was. Elvis closed his eyes. BB began playing. One slow chord. Then another. Elvis did not sing immediately. He stood there and listened. To the guitar. To the silence. To the memory of his mother's voice inside his heart. Then Elvis opened his eyes. And sang. The first note was low. Broken. Beautiful. There was no anger left in it. No need to defeat anyone. No need to prove BB wrong. This song was for the little boy in Tupelo. The boy who had loved his mother. The boy who had grown up confused by loss. The boy who had become famous but still carried questions nobody else could answer. BB's guitar followed him. Not competing. Supporting. Elvis's voice rose. The audience began to understand. They were no longer watching two legends challenge each other. They were watching two musicians speak the same language. BB threw his guitar. Elvis threw his voice. Pain becoming music. Music becoming truth. And then Elvis reached the moment everyone would remember. His voice climbed, higher, stronger, but this time the power did not come from anger. It came from acceptance, from forgiveness, from the realization that his mother's final lesson had been simple. You cannot change where you came from, but you can choose where your heart goes next. Elvis climbed higher. The note filled every corner of the theater. People stood. A woman near the front covered her face as tears fell. The musicians stared in silence. BB stopped playing. He wanted the entire theater to hear Elvis alone. And Elvis held the note. Long, pure, fearless. For one unforgettable moment, the entire theater froze. Then Elvis released it. Silence. Complete silence. And suddenly, from the side of the stage, the man in the dark hat appeared again. Security moved toward him, but he raised both hands. Wait. Elvis looked at him. The man stared at the letter, then at Elvis. For the first time, there was no anger in his face, only exhaustion. I spent years blaming your father. Elvis said nothing. The man continued. I wanted him to pay for what happened. His eyes dropped. But the truth is, I lost people because of my own choices too. The stranger who had brought the letter slowly stepped back into the light. The two men looked at each other. Years of anger stood between them. Finally, the stranger said, "Then why keep blaming the dead?" The man in the hat closed his eyes. He had no answer. Elvis stepped away from the microphone. Everyone expected him to say something cruel. Instead, he looked at the man and quietly said, "My mother wrote something for me." The man looked up. Elvis held the letter against his chest. And maybe you need to hear it too. The theater went silent. Elvis's voice became soft. A person's mistake doesn't have to become your life. The man stared at him. You don't know what I lost. Elvis nodded. No. He looked down. But I know what it means to lose someone and spend years wishing you could ask them one more question. The man's face changed. Elvis continued. You can't get those years back. A pause. But neither can I. BB watched Elvis carefully. Elvis looked toward the audience. So maybe the only thing left is deciding what we do with the years we still have. The man in the hat lowered his head. Security remained beside him. But nobody moved to drag him away. Not yet. BB slowly placed his guitar on the floor. Then he walked toward Elvis. The audience watched. Earlier that night, BB had laughed. He had challenged Elvis. He had called him an entertainer. But now he stood directly in front of him with tears in his eyes. I owe you an apology. Elvis shook his head. You were doing what musicians do. BB smiled. What? Elvis looked at him. Listening. BB laughed softly. No. He pointed at Elvis. Tonight I wasn't listening. The audience chuckled gently. BB's expression became serious again. Not at first. He looked toward the microphone. But I hear you now. Then BB did something no one expected. He slowly bent forward. Not as a joke. Not as a performance. He bowed. The theater exploded. Thousands of people rose to their feet. The applause thundered through the building. Elvis immediately reached forward and stopped him. Don't. BB looked up. Elvis smiled through his tears. No bowing. BB laughed. Why not? Elvis looked toward the crowd. Because tonight, we both learned something. Baby waited. Elvis pointed toward his guitar. You don't need to be louder than someone else to be heard. Then he touched his own chest. You just need to be honest enough to mean what you say. The applause grew louder. BB picked up his guitar. He looked at Elvis. One more. Elvis smiled. One more. The lights slowly returned. The orchestra joined them. And the theater that had expected a battle received something far greater. A song. 2 different voices. 2 different journeys. One unforgettable moment. And as Elvis and BB stood together beneath the lights, nobody remembered the laughter that had started the night. They remembered the silence after Elvis sang. They remembered the note that seemed to stop time. And they remembered what happened after. Elvis did not answer doubt with anger. He answered it with truth. Because sometimes, the greatest response is not proving someone wrong. Sometimes, it is becoming so honest, so fearless, and so powerful that even your greatest doubter finally understands who you really are.